your cryopreservation of oocytes to embryos to blastocyst cryopreservation, and also in certain situations where we need to do fertility preservation or, doing some freezing of in vitro matured IVM oocytes. Also in situations where we have seropositive samples. So we have a varied arena where cryopreservation is used, and we have an extremely eminent speaker, and extremely honored to have Dr. Kersi Avari sir today to talk about advances in freezing from basics, the entire journey, the full cryopreservation journey. So can I have Dr. Kersi's CV, please, Sindhu? Yeah, so this all of us, he's a well-known figure amongst the entire EART fraternity. We extend a wholehearted welcome to you, sir. Sir is the program director of EART. He's training and trained many embryologists in the field and who are successful in their fields across India and abroad. His areas of interest are clinical embryology, and clinical embryology, and he's doing a lot of research, many papers and citations to his credit. So we welcome you, sir. Before moving on to his presentation, we would also like to share exciting news from our end that we would be launching our scale fellowship programs, which is going to be a 1-year full-time fellowship programs, which is going to be both in embryology and also ART. So in embryology, we are extremely happy to tie up with Center of Healthcare Entrepreneurship and IIT Hyderabad for a hands-on course as well at the end of 1-year program. So we extend a warm welcome, and please share this to everybody and they would benefit. And we have 2 candidates every year in clinical embryology and 2 candidates in ART program. And you can just call this number and have more details. And we plan to start this humble gesture on the World IVF Day, that is on 25th of July 2025. We welcome all of you and request to take over the session from now on. Thank you, sir.
Fine. So shall I start sharing my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Yeah. Is it visible, clear?
Yes, sir.
Fine. Okay, so good evening, everyone. And I'm indebted to the organizers for giving me a permission or allowing me to speak on this innovative and a challenging topic, that is cryopreservation. Now, cryopreservation, initially, it was quite in a, I would say, minor scale or a dormant position as such. Still, there were rapid advances in the field of ART. Prior, it was just used only for cancer patients, just to preserve the testicular tissue. And it was in a very infantile condition because the techniques and all were not all that well primed or well developed. But once these ART techniques took up with a storm, then there was an inadvertent, or I could say an urgent need. Why this was necessary? To freeze extra stuff, to make the gametes available in the absence of the person, in emergency conditions, as a backup, sudden cancellation of a procedure like an ET. And believe me, that was not the end of it. The real challenge was that the frozen gametes or frozen cell, let us say cell at this moment, is successful as far as cryo is concerned only when its condition pre-freeze and post-thaw remains the same. So in cryo, we always say when we freeze it, there are 3 important steps: the recovery, the survival, and the subsequent viability. Now, we all know that ART has made rapid progress in all the fields, right from the stimulation, recovery of gametes, the pickup techniques, the culture techniques, the incubation techniques. All are making rapid stride with the same single goal in mind, that we want a proper, ideal, viable gamete at the end of the day, compounded by our precise, pristine freezing, handling, storing, and manipulating techniques. So with this, we just proceed. Now, this is basically like fertility preservation, because in Greek, cryos means cold, and cryopreservation is cold storage for an extended period of time. As I suggested, the bullet number 1, 2, 3 were first the principal causes or the reasons why we used to go in for cryopreservation when ART hadn't taken up in full sway. Now, this is what the necessities are as of today. Availability in the person's absence, in certain therapies, unavailability of the partner in a semen bank. This is just about it of the world's first ice baby. We are thorough with the world's first IVF baby. Now this is the world's first ice baby. Now, before we just jump to anything, let us be crystal clear that there are certain rules for cryopreservation as far as any gametes are concerned. Because the reason is, I still reiterate once again that even post-thaw, the embryos, the oocytes, the blastocysts, they look morphologically ideal. But what we are totally unaware is whether we have diluted or we have played havoc with their small biological internal structure, which till date we are not able to justify. Because there is not a single technique or a methodology which tells us about how ideal this embryo post-thaw is. So the golden rule is grade 1 gametes should be always used for cryopreservation as their survival is optimal. Second thing, when we handle them, when we store them, there are special cryoprotective media which we will deal across in this topic. So that should be ideal. Precision and freeze in the techniques, follow standard SOPs and protocols. Then your backbone, the vehicle, the most important vehicle, availability of liquid nitrogen, storage facility. Documentation is most important, because many a times there is a mixture or mismatch between the vials, the straws, the labels, the writings peel off, the labels peel off, monitoring of the levels go down, permanent disaster, no return, backup things. So these are all important steps. Before we even think of going for cryo, we have to list this. Because believe me, today, when centers are set up all across, there are certain labs which have to travel more than 150 kilometers just to get their cryo cans filled. So believe me, the stress and the trauma and the financial burden which a center has to experience. So you have to be very sure, because now with the strictness of the guidelines, a cryo is a must, whether your facility is an IUI grade 1 or an IVF center of grade 2. Now, these are just the bulleted points, what I told you. 3 important steps: recovery, survival, and functionally viable post-thaw. And remember, care and caution for one oocyte or one cryovial or one blastocyst is the same as needed for numerous cryovials. And garbage in is garbage out. Don't expect your cryo cans or your cryo procedure to be a miracle Pandora's box that you can freeze in anything and when you will thaw it, you will get an excellent result. No, that's absolutely not the case. You all must be aware of this. 2 techniques. Prior, it was slow freezing. Well, it went on very well. Not that it was not giving results. Please don't just brush it off because the new technology like vitrification has come. It was successful. But initially, every technology modifies, sharpens, professionalizes. In the same way, vitrification was a new technique, rapid, less time consuming, cooling rates were fantastically high, drop rate was instantaneous, and what it took care was to eliminate the water of crystallization which takes place in a cell during the time of freezing. Because you all know, cellular cytoplasm, chief constituent is water, and during supercooling, ice crystals are formed. The concentration of the ice crystals are really instrumental in disrupting the cytoarchitecture of the cell, in disrupting the cellular membrane or the plasma membrane. And once in any cell, if the plasma membrane is disrupted, the functionality of the cell goes. A little problem in this is chemical damage, yes, because in vitrification, we are using super concentrated solutions of DMSO or the penetrating cryoprotectants, whose toxicity till today is not exactly documented. Though people say it is safe, but remember, to justify or to pinpoint a damage caused molecular wise, it takes more than 2 generations down the line to register the problem as such. Filhal, as of today, as the things are going smooth, well, it has been met with obvious success all around. And it is the in thing, or I could say, one of the latest technology which has invaded ART. Or else otherwise, all the other things are comparatively the same. The processing methods are same, culturing methods are same, sperm preparation are same, recruitment is the same, etc., etc. So this debate will definitely go on and on. Now, you all know we can preserve all this paraphernalia. Okay? Basics. Freezing, or at the same time, in vitrification, it is called vitrifying. And thawing, it is not called thawing because when you vitrify, it is called warming. So these are the two basic essentials, backbone, which we should be always remembering. Dehydrating, because water is eliminated, cell shrinks, equilibrates subsequently. The same inverse goes for thawing. It is rehydrating, water enters, cell swells, cytoarchitecture being maintained, subsequent culturing, and the show goes on. Now, what we are utilizing, the most important ingredients, I would say, so are the cryoprotectants, because they are the ones which protect the biological tissue from the freezing damage. To make things easy for them, they are water soluble and there is a concentration dependent toxicity. Now we all know that whenever a cell shrinks, whether it is rapid or slow, it is thanks to the permeability of the cell membrane. Our basic school knowledge of osmosis, penetration potential, infusion, exfusion. So they work by lowering the freezing point of the solution, displace the intracellular water to the extracellular environment, thereby causing a shrinkage. So we must have seen whenever we put an embryo in a penetrating, dehydrating cryoprotectant, it suddenly shrinks. The shape changes from circular to something like polygonal. At times we become scared. Oh my gosh, what's gone wrong? Some people think the embryo is damaged. No. If the shrinkage is perfect and instantaneous, your embryo is perfect and viable or a grade 1. If the shrinkage is slow, or if it is not there, your blastomere is already dead or non-functional. Because what it does is, it subsequently changes the solute concentration in the liquid phase. But at the same time, for the cell to survive, the DNA integrity, functionality, in case of sperm acrosome responsiveness, and the fertilizing ability. Now, many people say, sir, we have thawed a semen vial. Recovery is excellent. But then comes the punchline. Motility is compromised. Well, cryo damage, improper freezing technique. Now, in a semen sample, when you thaw, what's the first thing which will help you out, raise your spirits? The sperm moving. But in case of an embryo or a blastocyst, what will the acid test? People instantly thaw, instantly transfer. We don't know whether the thawed embryo was live or dead, viable or not. So in my practice, what we used to do was, if the thawing cycle or a transfer was tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, we used to thaw the embryo or whatever the gamete was today evening at 9 p.m. Subsequently culture it. Check the stage at what the recovery was. Compare it with the stage at what it was frozen. Next day morning, after 10 to 12 hours of incubation, see the progress in its culture. That means your embryo is growing, it is viable, but that doesn't mean that it is going to give you a pregnancy. Agreed. Those who survive this cryo have a greater chance of giving you a result, because in spite of the super freezing, storage, thawing, the cellular integrity and the functionality has been at its epitome. And the stress inducing factors, or you can say that intracellularly, the work induced hypertrophy in the cellular organisms is literally minimal. Fine. Now, this is how I have documented the penetrating and permeating types, how they act, and these are the examples of the cryoprotectants. These are the non-penetrating ones. Now, whenever any cell is exposed to any exogenous chemical, there are definitely certain effects. Solution effects, how it messes the scenario, extracellular cell formation, subsequent dehydration, and intracellular. Now, intracellular ice is always fatal to the cell, because this is chiefly responsible for disrupting the cytoarchitecture and membrane trauma. Because it's the passage or the movement of water intra to extra without traumatizing the cell wall, without disrupting the organelles, because that's the reason post-thaw you have to always incubate or equilibrate your cells, oocytes, embryos in the culture to make them come at the same stage of osmolality potential intra and extra cell. Then and then only we can say that they are comparatively viable. Now, this is what happens on the plasma membrane. Now, why I'm trying to tell you this? Because freezing techniques all must have achieved gold medals in that. Doing this in this time, within minute I freeze it, within minute I vitrify it. But you should understand what it implies. What does each constituent do? What are the main target areas of trauma? How we can avoid it? Because the plasma membrane, which is a phospholipid bilayer, this is the main traumatic, this is the main structure which gets traumatized first, because it undergoes lipid phase separation. Solute effects with osmotic stress, coupled with ice crystallization. So all this trauma, the cell membrane has to bear it. At the same time, when we cool and we thaw, fluctuating temperatures equally play their toll. So the viscosity increases, the fluidity decreases. Common sense. During supercooling or sub-zero freezing, membranes become more rigid, because the cholesterol content in the membranes, the polyunsaturated fatty acids, they get hardened up. And when in the hardened ones, when thawing is not proper, what we register is membrane trauma or the membrane rupture as such. Correct? So all these things are taken care of by your cryoprotective agents. So they also have a shelf life, they also have an expiry period, they also have a storage temperature, and at the same time, they also have a certain temperature written on them, what stage, what temperature needed, plus the amount which we are needed to equilibrate them. Because many people, we say when we use 300 microliters, they compromise, do with small droplets. Agree, you save the media, no doubt about it. But then what you are thoroughly messing up is the osmolarity. Because the evaporation of water from a droplet is much faster and quicker than evaporation of water from a small well of media, even though it is 300 microliters. So with the evaporation of water, the concentration takes place. The solute-solvent distraction takes place. You got my point. And at the sensitive process, when the embryos are thawing or freezing, this solute concentration plays a crucial part as far as subsequent survival is concerned. Now, this is just a diagrammatic representation of how cryo injuries lead to osmotic shock due to the solution effect. It's like when we are suddenly brought from a super cool room into a very hot room, don't we feel the typical shock as such because of the receptors, the thermal receptors, which take care of the temperature? So obviously, there are many peripheral changes which take place. Our heart rate, blood output, perspiration potential. The same is the case which is the trauma which takes place on a cell. Cryo injuries due to intracellular ice formation leads to breakdown of intracellular structures. Now see here, induction of molecular impartments. All these procedures can be messed up due to improper freezing and thawing, improper handling of cryoprotective agents, improper quality of cryoprotective agents, and improper dexterity of the embryologist. Take, for example, the sperm. If during the process ROS increases, membrane impairment takes place, DNA fragmentation increases, viability goes down, apoptosis increases, cytoskeletal impartment. See, this is all the negatives. In case of an oocyte, when the ROS is stress, let's generalize, reactive oxygen species causing stress to any of the gamete due to innumerable procedures which a cell has to undergo during both the procedures. Blastosis, what does it do? Ultimately or unfortunately, apoptosis is common. Epigenetic changes are common. And mitochondrial impairment is common. And you know how a mitochondria is important as well as surviving capacity of the cell is concerned. Now, osmotic stress revealed to be the main reason of cell death. This is why I'm trying to target is because many a times we don't realize that the thing which we have thought, agreed, sperm moves, we can catch them. Oocytes, embryos, blastocysts. Post-thawing or post-warming, we are not sure at all whether it is surviving or not. The only test is culture and see a subsequent increase. Maybe in a blastocyst, you might see an expansion or subsequent initiation of hatching. Now, what happens? Cryoprotective agents, DMSO, dimethyl sulfoxide, ethylene glycol, propylene glycol, they are all toxicants. Please, agreed, they are used in high concentration. But inadvertently, we have to use them against rampant cell death in cryoprotective. So this is the challenging part which till today hasn't been addressed meticulously. Same case, when you cool properly, your thawing rates also have a significant effect on cell survival because it is vice versa. Initially, it was water to ice, now it is ice to water. So, low temperature cell preservation consists of CPA, 10% dimethyl sulfoxide, along with other combinations, which are very responsible to maintain the cellular integrity. The reason why ultrastructure DNA integrity has to be maintained, biological samples need to be preserved in a state of suspended animation at cryogenic temperature of -197 only, not in the vapors, which may be even -140 or -120, because even at those temperatures, there is a slight movement of atoms and molecules intra-extra cell. So suspended samples in vapors for a prolonged period will lead to their apoptosis in spite of fantastic freezing or thawing procedures. These are the changes or molecular alterations which take place at a cellular level, the proteomic changes, epigenetic changes, genomic changes, and subsequently offspring changes, manifestation of all. Agreed. Even our ART techniques which we are doing, we are subjecting the gametes to various phases of trauma and stress. During denudation, in ICSI when we suspend them to high A's, concentration of high A's, highest toxicity, exposure time, dilution, when we inject the PVP concentration, the dilution of PVP, how much we say, the oocyte membrane trauma. So that's why we see a post-ICSI, how fast the oocyte cone or the injecting cone heals itself faster. the way the cytoplasm oozes out. So these are all characteristics which we can actually see during the procedure, which unfortunately in vitrification or warming, they take place intracellularly and we are not able to observe it per se. Another thing now, alteration in oocytes. How an oocyte can be challenged at the cellular level, at the proteomics. Now here no significant alterations are revealed because nobody has tested them. Epigenetic agents, well, later on we can come to know, and genomic changes. Sperm, how the changes can take place. Most important, DNA fragmentation, increasing oxidative stress, and ultimately, so the reason is every injected sperm in a procedure of ICSI will show you a zygote, provided it is subsequently going to progress fantastically in a time scale manner of development till the blastocyst condition. But had that sperm being used in an IVF, if there was any nuance with the sperm, even fertilization would not have taken place. That's the thing, or I could say SOP to be taken into consideration. Now, whenever we do embryology, whether it is freezing, thawing, handling, culturing, these two factors play havoc on the cell because we till today are not able to exactly control the intra and the extracellular environment. Our gametes are prone to osmotic stress, temperature-induced alterations, pH fluctuations, three vital zones when a cell is suspended into any media: intracellular, extracellular, and the cell membrane, and three vital parameters which are needed for cell survival. Now, a little into the temperature and pH, because that is very, very important as regards to the media which we subsequently expose the gametes to during freezing and thawing. So there is a famous principle called Le Chatelier's principle. A cell in an equilibrium stage, balanced both by temperature and pH, as long as everything is smooth, it is going well. But sometimes when any changes are made to either one, the system responds by shifting the equilibrium to basically counter that change. It's a compensatory effect. So temperature fluctuations, we can easily monitor and take care of it. But pH fluctuations, well, we have to follow certain guidelines or SOPs. Increase in temperature can cause the system's equilibrium to shift, absorbing the excess heat leading to the formation of extra hydrogen ions. This decreases the solution's pH, and there is a dissociation of ions when the temperature increases. So it is not that temperature plays an important part only during the culture system. Incubator 37, humidity ideal, CO2 5 or 6%. Even in these procedures, when the gametes are exposed to cryoprotective materials or cryoprotective solutions outside of the incubator, temperature holds a very important part. Now, this is how it affects the metabolic activity of the cells. This is a little more into details, Iogon, because we always scribble, why aren't my embryos giving me a positive result? In spite of them being excellent in shape, size, and morphology, in spite of them being transferred atraumatically, in spite of the endometrium being fantastically receptive, proliferated, in spite of the patients having taken the postnatal support medicines perfectly. Now, this is how variations can affect the functionality of the gamete, whether it's an embryo, whether it's a blastocyst, or any other cell. First of all, let's consider one thing, that this cryo, freezing and thawing holds good for any cell of the body, because let's not forget that these are also our cells which we are handling. The oocyte, the largest and the most sensitive cell, and the sperm, the most tiny and the motile cell. They also have their intrinsic characteristics. Sperm, a little extra to help us as far as the motility is concerned. And the other ones, just the viability. Another important reason, what happens when elevation in temperature takes place? What happens to the cell membrane? What happens to the cellular proteins? What happens to the bonds? Correct? breaking of the bonds or overheating, the bonds that keep the structures together, they break. Weaker ones break, temperature rises, then the stronger ones start disintegrating. So this compromised or loss of protein structure is lethal for cell survival. Howsoever, morphologically, the cell will appear fantastic. Many times we see the posts and all, lovely recovered things, lovely, but are they gonna be viable? If viable, pregnancy positive, is the pregnancy carried through all the trimesters? If no, why? The protein or the genome is compromised. Of course, there are 160 reasons for a live take-home baby rate, so I cannot cherry pick anyone, but at least in a thaw cycle. But one thing is there, even my experience was there. Thawed embryos, because during my time when slow freezing was at its peak, certain doctors never wanted to take the risk of carrying the day 3 embryos to the blastocyst in the event of them getting suddenly arrested. So we used to freeze them at day 3, or what we call it as the morulation or early compaction. Thaw them. If recovery was perfect, culture them to another 2 days, see the blast and then transfer it. In case of certain SOS conditions, myself have frozen numerous zygotes and the zygotes have been carried on because at that time, single step media wasn't available. It was sequential, grade 1 and grade 2, just like Cerelac Formula 1, newborn to 4 months, 4 months to elderly. So all these modalities have been worked out. So the latest techniques, what we are doing is, we are modifying them, but at the same time, the more the modifications, many a times we ourselves are compromising in the handling of the gametes, which is extremely sensitive during this time. Now, when we freeze the sperm, initially it was neat semen sample. Now, neat semen sample means what? Freeze it with the seminal plasma, contamination, thaw them, subsequently wash them, spin them, incubate them. Osmotic stress was huge. The sperm, howsoever excellent the initial motility or the linearity and the kinetics were, they were not able to support it. So came the second thing, capacitate, wash, freeze it, glycerol, good quality NLR glycerol. It is non-toxic, so it need not be eliminated subsequently. Well, it struck very well. So this is just the technique of how you use it. Now here also, most important, CPM should be at room temperature. Otherwise, if it is slightly cold, cryo shock, the sperm will be losing the kinetics instantly. Mix it slowly, because both have got differences in their densities. Mix it well, drop by drop. Don't rush. After mixing, keep it standing for half an hour. Let the solutions permeate. Let the entire length of the sperm from the acrosomal tip to the tip of the tail be coated in the cryoprotected media. So this is very important. Okay. And then we used to label the straw or the vial, and we used to freeze them in a vapor cooling method because all the labs were not taking the advantage of a cryo freezer, which was costly. Logic is, a cell will freeze it properly. In those days, it was believed, with a constant gradient drop in temperature, or what we call it as a monitored drop rate of temperature, which was at times even as low as 0.3 degrees per minute. That's why it was called slow freezing. Now, the same difference in temperature we take when we do is our vapor freezing. Now, this is a vapor freezing method because liquid nitrogen minus 196, the vapors up the line, they are super cooling agents, no doubts about that. But the preserving or the cell maintenance property slowly diminishes as we go up. So in order to allow a gentle cooling without traumatizing the cell instantly in a fraction, we used to suspend them in vapors for 20 minutes till it hardens up. It hardens gentle, not with the harshness. Now at the same time, we had fantastic freezers. Now freezer doesn't mean only sperm or embryos. There are something like 35 parameters which could be done. So including cord blood cells, stem cells, ovarian tissue. There are multiple programs. The chamber, the controller, and the monitoring. Just press the program, tuck, 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 it goes down, all by the machine. No mechanical interference. But still, there was a little bit of lacunae, and the formation of ice crystal took the world by storm. And so people are still using slow freezing in many of the labs. Believe me, because in sperm, if you have a sperm bank, freezing should be done in these mechanical freezers, electronic freezers only. They ensure perfect entity of the sperm pre-freeze and post-thaw, because advanced programs have got separate program for epididymal sperm, testicular sperm. The reason being, the complete entity of this sperm is quite different from the ejaculated ones. These are the various programs. I don't want to show. This is just a diagrammatic representation of how the slow freeze drop slowly, whole time, because here we have to take care of certain physics, latent heat, ice crystal formation, the seeding, the holding time. Now, the next was thawing. Very simple, fast, manual, no gadget needed, but still 90% of the troubles or the 90% of the lacunae lies during thawing, because we are not justifying the need of what we call it as the rapid crash down of temperature initially, which is very, very essential. This is just a general methodology of a sperm freezing. Now, the next came with a bang, vitrification, glass in Greek, super cool liquid, ideal for preserving the cells at extreme low temperature. Advantage, very fast. Another advantage, 95% or 98% of the crystals of water or water of crystallization is eliminated. Okay. Now, this is what exactly the contents are. Vitrification contents. Vitrification media. It's a complete compost of high quality media, all responsible for minimizing cellular trauma by taking care of the osmolarities. Hydroxypropyl cellulose, what it prevents? Trehalose, DMSO dimethyl sulfoxide, and a little bit of incorporation of gentamicin. What does trehalose do? The very important constituent, it's a sugar. And why is actually sucrose very important? See, these are all in micro quantities. Now, we should know what the ideal reason is and what are they used for. Otherwise, what is the necessity in that? Now, this is the most important function of a cryoprotectant, and most important are the concentrations. Correct? Reason. Permeable cryoprotectants induce the vitrification of cellular environment before the ice crystal formation. It is not that when you dip it, suddenly the ice crystal formation takes place. No, there is a slight bit of biochemical change or the environmental or the situational change in the contents of the cytoplasm which takes place, after which the solidification takes place. So, concentration of cryoprotectants, they are also called as antifreeze. 5 to 15% concentration is enough to allow the cells to survive after freezing and thawing also. Now, what comes into play? The quality of the kits, the way in which we have preserved the kits, the way in which we have subjected that individual, I would say, media at what temperature, room temperature, etc., etc. The quantity, and most important is how fast we expose them to the certain media which exactly is labeled. So please, different kits have got a different methodology. So please read the product inserts thoroughly. Find out the time of exposure, how much they have to be exposed into, at what temperature they have to be exposed into. So all this is of vital importance. Now, some protocols basically at times differ, because every procedure is a two-step. Vitrification drop sizes, as I told you. Some say 1 ml, some say 300 microliter, because each kit has done its own thorough research before subjecting or telling us as to what is the ideal concentration needed. Don't substitute one method into another kit. Just like we don't mix and match the media in embryology, because what? The water of the osmolarity of the water which is used can play havoc. Now, why is the droplet size important? Because droplet size affects the evaporation when we harbor it out into the dishes. And consequently, it is consistency of the environment surrounding. Now, when they say environment peripheral has to be 37, it has to be 37. We just have a touch feel. Oh, this looks warm. Chalo, let's do it. Oh, we are in a hurry. What's the goddamn hurry? Vitrification already has reduced your time by hours. So couldn't you compromise 1 or 2 minutes? Couldn't you take care? You just take the vials out of the refrigerator. Just do it. Just do it. Oh, sir, it is warm. No, these are all nuances which can literally fool you as such. Now, vitrification warming protocol is very, very important. Most crucial step. Avoid ice crystal which can be detrimental. So ice crystals are not formed only during freezing, please. It is also formed during thawing, extracellular environment. Correct? Because see, this is exactly what happens during warming. Intracellular CPAs are rapidly eliminated from the cell and diluted immediately so that the cytotoxic effects are nullified. That's the backbone. Subsequent steps can be performed at room temperature or at 37 degrees depending on the manufacturer. Sucrose, again, I highlight the importance of sucrose, is incorporated into the vitrification solution to dehydrate free water and to ensure the protection or insulation of the cell membrane. So please, when you see the constituents of any media, I would say whenever we handle any kit, even a DNA kit, please check out why the hell is any given substance needed, what it is used for. If it is not there, what happens? If it concentration varies, what happens? If it time of exposure happens, what happens? So you have to be pretty sure about it. So it's like a saying, physician, heal thyself. What is expected of ideal vitrification warming cycle? Well, everything goes well in the sperm, you'll get a healthy recovery, fantastic kinetics. In embryos, of course, recovery with minimal blastomere degeneration, blastocyst, minimal ICM and trophectoderm degeneration, and oocytes, good recovery, no structural alterations, and the first sign is ideal zygote formation at the right time. Now, timing holds a key to success. I inject 2P and ideally seen at 18 to 20, first cell cleavage at 25 to 27 hours. This is the first sign of the shape of the things to come. Now, important note, what happens? Now, please, at the same time, remember, survival and viability doesn't tell you that it is going to implant and give you a positive. But yes, if these two parameters take place at the right time, at the right way, your chances of an implantation and subsequent pregnancy definitely are on the higher side. Now, this is a little detailed one, the temperature and how the toxicity materials depend. Now, I'll just cherry pick something because there is a law, what we call it as Darcy's law of hydraulic conductivity. Now, this is very important when things go intra to extra, where the volume plays a very important part. Volume, along with the concentration, along with the temperature, will affect the semi-permeable osmolarity of the things intra and extra of the cell. The reason is why warming and rehydration at higher temperature beneficial for oocyte survival and subsequent development because permeability of CPS is enhanced. Correct? Remember, in freezing, CPAs at high concentration advantageous. During thawing, CPA dilution and elimination is advantageous. Okay, now this is a little more I have gone into it, which is not as of importance for juniors to understand. You have this vitrification, you have got the carrier devices, please set your house in order before you go for any procedure. Exposure or crucial time in vitrification. Exposure of gametes to cryoprotectants within a time frame. Otherwise, more or less or prolonged exposure is detrimental. These are the reasons. So what do we do? In case if a little extra time, we have got buffered solutions, basically buffer. Just like in sperm preparation, when we use a salt solution, it is buffered by hippies. What do the buffers do? Help survival. Prevents, because if buffering is not there, this can take place. Now, you know parthenogenetic activation, prolonged exposure of oocytes in denudation when we highest them in high concentration over an extended period of time. Most important, transit time during warming. From the canister liquid nitrogen instantly into the warming solution, minimal exposure in the air. Therefore, get the canister as close to a working table. Be set with everything. Rapid warming minimizes the formation of intracellular ice crystals, and it prevents recrystallization. That is very important. In spite of all your efforts, cryo damage can be done at all these places. And what does it do? Zona hardening, zona pellucida, osmotic shock, cryo fracture, cryo injury. All cells are not the same. The cells which are robust in the active stage, just like in sperm, freshly spermiated sperm, senescent sperm, elderly sperm don't survive cryo. DNA damage, cell death, why is it caused? Mitochondrial damage, what does it do? Let's not believe that even minus 90 is supercooling, because ice crystals can merrily form even at minus 90. Even at minus 130, there is movement of atoms and molecules. Only at minus 196, which is the actual liquid nitrogen immersion temperature, there is no movement of atoms and molecules. Only thing which can affect is a background radiation or an atomic explosion. Cons of vitrification. High doses of DMSO, depending upon the route of administration. Cell death, irritation, necrosis, toxicity effects, alterations in epigenetic landscapes. Now, there have been lots of debates on this. Even the company people have been questioned. They say, as of now, it is given a green signal, but epigenetics can't be ruled out instantly. It takes a very long time, maybe 2 to 3 generations, before which we are able to say that, oh, this might have been the reason. Now, when we maintain the cryo can, it looks very easy, but what are our fears? Canister malfunction, maintenance of the dropping of liquid nitrogen levels, unexpected drop in temperature. And these are all collateral damages for which there is no return. Once the damage is done, it is permanent. So to maintain a cryo bank is a very Herculean and a challenging task. We have got these DVARs, BA, biological storage, 3, 4, 5, 6 capacity in liters, TA, transport, because these ones will have the canisters on which there will be a frost line. Means samples, liquid nitrogen levels have to be there till the frost line. Lower than that, it will be the vapor suspension. Or when we want to transfer embryos, airship them, we have got the vapor shipper. Absorbent material, nitrogen is absorbed, temperature is maintained, samples are stored, but they have a time limit that this canister will maintain the temperature only till 24 hours, depending upon the absorbing capacity of this medium. Canister functioning, it is just like a thermos flask. 3 ways of transport or 3 ways of transfer of heat is prevented. Conduction, convection, radiation. So, what are they made of? They are made of high density aluminum foam with minimal porosity. Of course, those cryocans or those DVARs, that is DVAR, cryocan is a company's name, DVARs is the original name. Beavers used to store viral and bacterial load are made from high quality glass, but they are ridiculously expensive. So what we are using them is, we are actually from this animal husbandry. Our cryogenic containers are aluminum foam bound. The porosity is very less. When we peep into it, this is the main canister, this is the metallic sheath. So what we get is a valve or a slot over here, which is creating a vacuum. Suspended only at the neck core part. This is completely insulated. So we have to take care when we maintain them, when we handle them. Don't bang them, always in an upright position. I'll go next. Yeah. So this is how you will check the cryocan once you receive it in your lab. Check the vacuum plug. Tap to see there is a reverberating sound. So there is a thorough vacuum. Slowly charge the canister. See the maintenance rate till 24 hours. Next day when you check it, we were checking it why? By the dipstick method. So this is what we call it as the holding time. If the holding time is less, the outside of the canister becomes very cold. Droplets of water start forming. That means there is a leakage in the neck core part, because that's the only part where there is a connection maintained. Sorry. What did I do? Oops. Yeah. So this was how we used to do our dipstick method. Still there, because this is a typical, what we call it as a polymer plastic. Dip it for a few seconds, frosting, and we can check the levels. It should be done every day. Then how to maintain your cryo vials. Cryo vials, very important. Many times you must have registered that when you thaw a vial, suddenly it explodes. The reason is your vial is not of a good quality, because in every vial there has to be an O-ring. Suppose you clamp it, you close it, you store in liquid nitrogen, the liquid nitrogen will enter inside. When you want to thaw it out, you take it out. Liquid nitrogen will expand 1 part to 700 parts in air. So the pressure inside is more than 10,000 psi, so it will explode like a bomb. So good quality polypropylene cryo-resistant cryo vials should be taken. This is just an internal structure as to how it looks it. Please select a standing, not the round based as such. So these are all your cryo accessories. And even they have an expiry period. Please remember that. Okay. Cryogenics. And the most important question. The lower the temperature, the longer and the most successful is the freezing. Yes, very true. Because this is the principle. All the biological activity, degradation is prevented. The longer the time you freeze with proper ingredients, the success is high. Now, what facilitates it? Just like carbon dioxide is ideal for media equilibration or culture, same way, liquid nitrogen is a cryogenic gas. All cryogenics have extreme low temperature, large ratio of expansion. Our liquid nitrogen, the characteristics, it is obtained by fractional distillation of air. I'll remove this, I'll go across. These are all the other cryoprotectants or cryogenics, sorry. Helium, expansion capacity, hydrogen, we can't use helium, we can't use hydrogen, neon is a rare gas, oxygen is inflammable. So for us, liquid nitrogen is the best. People used to say, when you store them, you are compromising the DNA part. No, it is not like that. It is maintained well. Subsequently, by the RIN test, which I'll tell you, yeah, this is it. RIN test was what? RNA integrity preserving. So samples were tested pre-freeze and post-thaw. And the RNA was estimated on the RIN scale, which was quite appreciable. So extended preservation doesn't traumatize them. So this is what it is mentioned over here. Most important, the challenge in maintaining a cryocan is to control its evaporation rate, because even from a closed cryocan, the vapors are subjected to evaporation. So from a 11-liter canister, every day 90 to 110 cc of liquid nitrogen will evaporate. So this forces us to do what we call it as the process called topping up of the cryocan. where every third or fourth day we have to check the dipping level and maintain the cryocan level, because we have to see that samples are not in the vapors. If they are in the vapors, the quality will go down. Post-freeze, post-thaw recovery will be pathetic. Biological hazards, well, it can cause severe burns, but as per the Linden-Frost effect, instant pain, instant out, it won't traumatize you as much. Many cryocans in a room cause asphyxiation because liquid nitrogen displaces the oxygen from the air. So it should be a well-ventilated room, not lock and key. Proper ventilation, circulation of air. So this is what I call a stopping of cryocan. So we have got the neck core tubes. The caps are always loosely fitted. This is what it is exactly. So we have got the slots in case of biological cylinders and smooth ones in case of transport cylinders. So BA means biological devar, TA means a transport devar. Limit for preservation, as long as you freeze grade 1 gametes professionally, maintain the level of liquid nitrogen, thaw them professionally, samples can be stored for decades. Because out of these three, I rate storage as most important. I freeze perfectly, I thaw perfectly, but the storage is compromised somewhere in between. For a few days, they were exposed just to the vapors. Finish, you are gone, unfortunately. But still, in spite of all this, when we preserve sperm, these are all the areas where problems can take place. Remember, this is a cell. It can be subjected to trauma. It is subjected to trauma, and minute nuances will be observed. When observed under ultramicroscopy, when also under cellular structure, when observed under the contents of the cytoplasm, there can be damage to it. That's the reason 100% survival rate is not always seen in all the gametes cryopreserved. Now, your cryocans can also be contaminated, please. So there is also a technique of cryocan washing. But don't try it inadvertently at home as such. There are single simple steps. But prior to that, you have to separate all the samples into a backup cryo canister instantly without causing them trauma. Because we have seen at certain times the cryo vial drops in, we invert the whole canister, and you see the nuances which come out, paper clips, labels, rubber bands, multiple things come out from the cryocan. And remember, they also breed contamination as such. Tank cleaning, well, usually it's done with warm water, and prior to filling of new nitrogen, make it a point that the old can which is washed is thoroughly dry from inside, of course, which you cannot, because there are small narrow mouth canisters and there are broad mouth canisters. So you have to take ample care, because if ice crystallization takes place inside now, it will be a havoc for the cryocan. This is how nitrogen can also be contaminated, right? And believe me, for AIDS virus, you super freeze it, it can still survive. So that's the reason many times for such samples, separate cryocans. Please don't say, I have used that high security straw, super security straw, and I will keep that sample along with the others. No. Correct? Well, these are rinsing methods. It's up to you to copy this. Okay? But don't use it inadvertently, randomly every time, because you will be damaging, you will be causing more damage than good. Safety. Cryo demands, as I told you, recovery, survival, viable. For handling, protective equipment, asphyxiation concerns and pressurization concerns. Thawed samples can be deceptive. Okay? A thawed oocyte can show fertilization but still reveal a zygote arrest. So there are more things to be taken into consideration. A word of caution. Neither is device a magical hat or a magical elixir. You have to be precise at every step. And don't assume or presume that I have frozen this, so I will be getting an excellent recovery. No, not like that. That's the reason where quantity makes a challenge. A normospermic sample obviously will give you a good recovery than an OAT. A cohort of metaphase 2 oocytes when frozen the recovery will be like a pyramid. Few will degenerate. Few will show that they are ideal, but still they will not procreate. But still a handpicked fill will survive everything and will give you an optimal embryo. Because we remember, poor workman always brings his tools. Everything is simple and easy as long as the opposite person does it. Sorry, yes. Now, this is the reason of a rapid loss. So again, I suggest to you, please don't suspend them in vapor. So all your cryo canisters have this frost line. So liquid nitrogen levels have to be maintained till here. And all the canisters will have a small hole so that the level of nitrogen here and there is the same as such. Okay? These are the reasons for a tank failure. I don't want to go much into this. Now, we have got this gadgets because now I think this ICMR has made it mandatory that you ought to have monitoring devices because this is the neck part which usually cracks over here. So tiny cracks which happen over here leads into the leakage. Now this is why we handle the canister roughly. We bang the canisters while transit. We lay it horizontally. We drag it. So please put a small trolley and reserve them because a good canister will give you a good service for at least 15 to 20 years flawlessly. This is how we detect a loss. Our first method was just a human touch. If the canister appears very cold to the touch, oh, there is a leakage somewhere. The nitrogen has escaped in the vacuum and the metallic part is cooled. Or if there is frosting, because of the super cooling of the metal jacket, the atmospheric vapors condense and we see just like the frosting or on rainy season when we see the sweating on the refrigerators. So this is very important. Sensors are there, alarms are there, audible, visible and remote alarms, but everything comes at a cost. This is the latest one. Liquid nitrogen temperature sensor. The sensor is immersed as long as it's in liquid nitrogen. It is cooled. The moment liquid nitrogen level drops, sensor detects high temperature. It gives you an electronic alert. These are all the gadgets available, what you can do with them. But the sad part is one gadget per canister. That makes it very costly. These are the guidelines which have stated. Now, this is, of course, the cryo and the functionality was thanks to the scientist Lindenfrost. And the Lindenfrost effect is when we pour liquid nitrogen on the floor, you see the small globules rushing across because instantly when they come in contact, there is a slight layer of air which make the globules. And that's the reason we don't feel the pinch when we just slip our hand and take it out because air insulates. But the moment the time goes high, the skin comes in contact with liquid nitrogen, it will really mess it up. So that's a nasty thing. First aid, the frosts, okay? So I think that's my last one. Thank you for a patient hearing. I think I've exceeded the time by 5 minutes.
Sir, no problem. Thank you so much. I mean, you've spoken non-stop for 1 hour and the flow of the presentation was just excellent. It was like listening to, I mean, so many important points and new points in every aspect of cryo.
This had something like 160 slides. I chip-chopped them because I wanted to fit in. Because see, I've got various things. Cryo protection, cryo maintenance, cryo handling.
Yes,
just
sir.
like in carbon dioxide.
I really think we should have part 2, part 3 for this actually. Because, you know, it was just very nice. Very informative.
I think the masterclass, the time is all yours. There's no time constraint here. And
no. But still, I have to keep because see, I always see whenever you display a PPT, the maximum self-sufficient time is 5 to 6 seconds. After that, the audience gets bored. So I should keep on running the slides also faster.
Sir, I'll do one thing, sir. I'll just launch the quiz. So while people are answering, we will take the questions on the chat box.
Fine.
So I request you all to attempt the quiz. The results will be anonymous, but this is just to see how much you have understood. So, sir, the first question is on the chat box. As sir told, the volume of cryoprotectants matter. What would be the ideal volume of ES/BS to be used and for thawing solutions? I think you mentioned that we have to follow the manufacturer's protocol. But would you like to add anything to that, sir?
So that's very important. See, because it's not the timing of exposure, it's the volume, it's the temperature at which that certain solution has to be taken. It's very important. Because it is like, we draw a synonymity with the culture media as such. But in culture media, it is prolonged exposure. Here, what it is, because these things which we use are actually toxins. They are actually toxic. So we have to really control the exposure time over there, because the cell is suddenly exposed to such a severe osmotic stress that it should not do irreversible damage. It should not shrink so hard and harsh that it is not subsequently able to re-equilibrate. So therefore, I would suggest that before we use any kit, any company, no biasness towards any company or manufacturer, please read the product insert thoroughly. Do a mock run, do a dry run, and then you can sharpen your skills to it. Fine. Any other question?
Yes, the next question I don't really understand. It's
Okay.
She says, what about the freezing the semen sample by doing simple wash despite its parameters, and after thawing going with DG method to eliminate abnormal sperms which couldn't be done by simple wash method?
No, I need a little confusing question. See, when you first wash a sample or you capacitate, in the first you will be either using a swim up or a DG. So the bad sperm or the abnormal sperm are already filtered out during that time. And then when you freeze the aspirate, okay, whether by DG or by swim up, and you thaw it later on, there is no need to do any other further stress related procedure because it is simple glycerol. That's why I always say medical grade glycerol, which is non-toxic, is used. Because the more you keep on subjecting your thawed sample to spinning, and then the more and more is the deprivation or the reduction in the recovery level of the sperm. That's very important.
Yes. The next question is, what is the optimal height for placing the sample in the vapor phase in liquid nitrogen?
That's the biggest nuance as far as vapor freezing is concerned. Because everybody just thinks that the temperature at the vapor, agreed. At any height, the vapors are powerful enough to freeze the sample. But what we used to practice was, first with a dipstick, we used to just judge, because we used to do that always in a storage canister or a TA, because TA will never have the liquid nitrogen till the top. It will always be less because you are utilizing it subsequently.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So first see the depth at which the level is, and at least 5 to 6 inches above that we used to suspend them. Of course, it is also a gamble. Let me be brutally honest. It's a gamble.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And the next question is, once in how many days, weeks, or months is the dework cleaning preferred?
See, I would suggest at least once in 6 months. But please, it all depends upon how well you handle the canister. If you feel the labels are being,
can we shift all the things to another dework?
Oh yes. But see, please be very careful when you clean it. Don't mess up the integrity of the canister. Like excessive warm water. Actually, it's to be very diluted chlorine bleach, but I avoid it. Kisi ka chlorine ka concentration, if it is more and the chlorine is not washed off, I don't want peripheral collateral trauma. So it is just plain warm water. Rinse it thoroughly. Invert it. Now the problem is